Hello everyone, so today I'm going to be talking a little bit about Blizzard Entertainment, our good buddies, our old pals, the makers of World of Warcraft, and seemingly the people who have dropped the ball, or maybe, I'd say rather, dropped the ball maybe, a year ago and just have not been able to find it since, because the World of Warcraft has been quite strange. It really is as if they completely just knocked it down on the priority list. It seems to be getting not a great deal of attention, and while they might be working on the most awesome stuff manageable, that's not a word, while they might be working on the most awesome stuff imaginable, down, sort of in their secret bunker, I would like to make the point that doesn't matter right now. What matters is when a player logs into the game, what is there, what are they seeing, and you know what? Warlords of Draenor hasn't, it's coming up in, it's 5 months exactly now, coming up in 6 months, since we have had a major content update to Warlords of Draenor. And listen, patch 6.1, yeah, it had a few things that I do like, obviously. The Harrison Jones things were fun, the new Darkmoon thing's fun. But is that a major content patch? Is that even something of a similar scale to, say, patch 5.1 and patch 5.3 in terms of the actual world content that it gives you to do on a daily or weekly basis? I would argue no, it's not, because half of it's a rehash anyway. The Harrison Jones stuff is cute, but after that, there's not really a great deal. So it's been 5 months since we've got an update, nearly 6, and more importantly, there has been no public test realm or announcement or chatter about patch 6.2, bar a few tiny sort of tidbits from like a month ago. We have no idea about a date or anything like that, and as I recently covered in a news video, it usually takes them 3 months to PTR a major patch, especially if it's going to be a major raid patch like patch 6.2. And the reason why I say major raid patch is because it's always been the case, at least, from the start of Mists of Pandaria, that they have a raid patch, then they have a minor patch, then they have a raid patch, then they have a minor patch. So you had 5.0 being a raid, 5.1 being a minor patch, 5.2 being a raid, 5.3 minor, and then 5.4, of course, being the Siege of Orgrimmar. So what's my point here? It's looking like it will be 8 months between the launch of Warlords of Draenor and a major content patch. Now, to put that in a bit of a different context, yes, it's still the same amount of days, but, that's 2/3 of a year. So we've established this 8-month period as a little bit of a, well, it's probably going to be a thing based on all of the past information, stuff that we have. And you know what? Previously, I would have been willing to give Blizzard the benefit of the doubt, or maybe be a bit optimistic about things, but I don't actually trust them enough to do that anymore. Back when I sort of heard Tom Chilton say things, I was pretty down on them, but I was still thinking, well, maybe we'll get these yearly expansions. When Blizzard devs talked about updates and, being more swift, I thought, well, maybe this will happen. But I don't think I'm willing to really listen. Or not listen, I mean, I'm not willing to take as much stock in the words of developers until I actually see action start to happen, because I really do think that the player base have just been led on a little bit by the stuff the devs have said over the last while, because so much of it just doesn't come to pass. And I understand that they're people too, and obviously they get very excited about World of Warcraft, as do all of us, like we all do as well. But the thing is, a lot of false expectations were set, and even if something was not, promised or guaranteed, it's still about managing expectations, and then when those things are broken, it means we're less likely to really take heed of what you guys say. Anyway, so, as I said, 8 months, bit of an issue. Why is this more of a problem, though, than other 8-month gaps in the game, for an example? Well, first of all, I would like to say that this is the very start of an expansion, and this patch 6.0 world content was, at least in terms of sheer quantity, less than, say, what we had in Mists of Pandaria. So an 8-month wait after patch 5.4 in Mists meant that you were able to avail of the Timeless Isle, it meant you were able to avail of the Isle of Thunder, the Isle of Giants, the patch 5.1 content, and all the 6.0 content, and then of course a multitude of raids and LFRs and stuff like that had came out. Whereas in Warlords of Draenor, it doesn't have the benefit of any of that, right? There's no patch content for us to do. 8 months waiting at the end of an expansion is not as bad as 8 months waiting at the start of an expansion, because during the expansion, content and features will have been added. And I think that's why this waiting period, and even the 5 months of it that's passed so far, has been so, I think, hard on people. It really is amazing how much faster stuff sort of seemed to turn sour with Warlords of Draenor, and as I've covered many times, I think a lot of that is because it was a great 1 or 2 month expansion in terms of the actual design of all of the pacing and things like that, but unless you're a raider, after that, I just don't think it really has the legs. Now, to give us another bit of a trip down memory lane, let's go back to the Wrath of the Lich King, our good friend Arthas. And there was a big gap in that expansion as well, a real big gap that came about during, between patch 3.3, which is Icecrown Citadel, and the very end of the expansion. That was a year. And at that point, people were just thinking, whoa, a year. Like, I still remember in Total Biscuit's old podcast, Blue Please, and yes, I listened to his stuff before he YouTubed, but in his old podcast, Blue Please, he was, ranting about, wow, it's been a year. This is a bit mad. Funny to think that, it doesn't look so bad in comparison to, say, what we got with 5.4. But again, I'd like to make the point that during that year of Icecrown Citadel, we did have the benefit of a lot of stuff. We had the Argent Tournament stuff, we had Ulduar to go back and do for achievements and things like that. We also had the new TOC, 5-player dungeon, and then we had 3 of, in my opinion, some of the best dungeons they've ever made with the ICC 5-player heroics, which were, at the time, they were pretty tricky, really awesome bits of content, and I think that was really good for just how alts and stuff like that worked out. Whereas now, yeah, it's a bit of a different game, but the nature of the content, I think, does mean that it's burnt through more quickly, so any gaps, any big gaps in content are, I think, a lot more noticeable, and that's something that we really do appear to have been seeing. So I suppose while this right now is not the biggest lull in content that we've ever had, well, when you add on the extra months that it will take to PTR a new patch and get it out the door, yeah, it's going to be a pretty significant gap in content, and I think it is just a little bit, well, insane that that's happening at the very start of an expansion. At the start, what is up with that? Oh, it's weird, and actually I think I might sort of know what's up. At one point, I remember Egan Hazacostas, aka Watcher, one of the lead devs for World of Warcraft, say that their goal was more just to ensure that there wasn't a massive gap between the end of this expansion and the start of the next one. And you know what? That's a laudable goal. That's brilliant. I think we all want that after patch 5.4, and certainly it was a very popular thing to say at that time. But what I would argue is that if that means that the content of an expansion is strung out to such a ridiculous point, then you know what? People are just, your attrition rate's going to go mad. People are just going to drop the expansion and not play as much. And I think, my personal sort of suspicion, is that a word? I suspect, yes. I suspect that in a month, when we do find out the player numbers, that Warlords of Draenor will have done a very poor job of retaining people. Basically because of the kind of 2015 situation of things, and, well, content it looks far off right now. They haven't done a great job of announcing things and talking about things and really getting people excited. So I think, yeah, we're going to have a bit of a problem. And going back to what I talked about with Ian Hazacostas saying that, it's better to space things out across the expansion, like, I agree with that to a degree, but I think what you've got to realize is that the thing that matters to a paying subscriber is what they see on the horizon right now when they're making that subscription decision, or what they see when they go in-game. And for all intents and purposes, for the last 5 months, that's been the same thing. And you know what? If 6.0 was coming out next month, I wouldn't have any problems. The issue is that it's at least 2 months off, most likely 3, because of the PTR process. And that means that right now, there's not a lot of hope for the future. I mean, I've got a lot of hope for 6.2. I'll be right on it when that PTR comes out, but I think for a lot of people, there's not a great deal of hope for the future, and they log in, unless they're a raider, there's not a great deal going on in-game, and that is a massive, massive problem. Now, why is all of this happening? Because, well, it's a bit weird, isn't it? It certainly is a bit strange, especially after, when Titan was dropped, and they did all those big interviews saying, World of Warcraft is absolutely our priority. World of Warcraft is going to last at least for another 10 years. Remember those big headlines in all the gaming news websites and all the fanfare about Titan's gone, but we're redoubling in World of Warcraft. Where is that redoubling of resources? Where? Because it's not being seen by your paying subscribers. as I said, it doesn't matter how cool the stuff in your secret bunker is, if that is going to come out in a stupidly long amount of time, well, guess what? People will have left the game by then, and people won't get to see your super awesome, amazing content. It's all a bit of a pity. Now, all of that stuff was said, and remember what I said about not really taking much stock in the things the World of Warcraft developers say because they're not very good at following up on them? Yeah, let's apply it. Let's apply that principle here. So, in terms of priorities internally, what's going on? Is World of Warcraft still a high priority? Because your actions don't back up what you said. They don't. It's that simple. Now, another thing, which I personally have suspected has been a massive issue, is production issues. And when I say production, I more mean that in a team of something, you've got the producer who is kind of, they do a lot of managing, they deal with dates, they kind of make sure that everything is shipshape and running smoothly. If, say, a lot of dates slip, then dealing with that and trying to stay on track and on target of release dates and goals and deadlines, that's kind of a lot of the stuff that a producer does. So, when I say production issues, I basically mean that I think is it some form of development hell going on inside the World of Warcraft team? Because, as many people have said, as Blizzard have said themselves, the World of Warcraft team more than doubled. I believe it's now somewhere in the region of like 220 people. I don't know how much they outsource or anything like that, but I know the core team is like 220 staff. So, what are those staff working on because they joined during the end of MoP? And that's one of the reasons why Warlords of Draenor was a bit late. And I would have thought that those production issues would have kind of calmed down by now. You would have thought that with that amount of staff, what they would be able to do is essentially run a pace of patches similar to what was going on with the start of Mists of Pandaria, where you had a new patch every 3 months or so. You would have thought they'd be able to do that, with during an entire expansion if they had doubled the team instead of just the first half of the expansion. And that hasn't happened. So those staff are clearly working in some shiny future expansion, and as I said earlier, that's fine, that's cute. Is that translating to actual in-game stuff that your paying subscribers are going to give a crap about now? No, it's not. Maybe they put a lot of staff onto a new expansion around the time when your man, what was he called? Tom Chilton, that's it. When Tom Chilton was saying, oh yeah, we might be doing yearly expansions. And maybe that's just all blown up in their face. Because it seems like there's serious issues. So what I would say is, whoever is the lead producer of World of Warcraft needs to just wake up and look at what's going on. Either that, or there needs to be an executive decision to shift them onto another role, perhaps. Because clearly, a very poor job is being done in terms of keeping the World of Warcraft team productive and shipping deliverables that actually are pushed out to the subscriber base so that they can really play with them and enjoy them. Because that's what we all want to do. That's what Blizzard wants to do. They want to entertain us so that we give them their money to be entertained. That's a great relationship. Just that right now they're not really sort of pulling their end of things, and I suspect we are going to see a big subscriber dip. And that really is sad for me to say. I remember, right, back in, I think it was last summer, when I was really, really excited about Warlords of Draenor, and, that's when all the questing and stuff was still new, and I just assumed, right? I assumed that 3 months after the launch of Warlords, we would get something the size of patch 5.1. I assumed 3 months after that, we get something the size of patch 5.2, because, well, that was based off what was going on in Mists of Pandaria, and I remember saying very clearly in a video, Warlords of Draenor has got such a potential to have a massive and really strong launch. And then after that, if they are able to back it up with really, really good post-release content, then they're going to retain those subscribers. Maybe it will climb World of Warcraft out of the ditch. Maybe it will. That was my hope. That really was my hope, and it just sucks that I now cannot believe that will be the case. So yeah, basically, it seems like there's big production issues. Whoever's the main producer person over there at Blizzard needs to either go or refocus the sort of efforts of the team or something, because something's seriously out of whack. I mean, come on, if they feel like they need to stretch out content this much, that just tells you all you need to know, doesn't it? They should never feel like they've got to do that if everything is going okay on their side of things. So maybe there's trouble at paradise. Just that I suppose rather than only sucking for the people in whatever paradise there's trouble in, there's, well, also trouble for us mere plebeians on the other side of things. Just kind of a pity. So there you go, that's it for this video. Sorry about it being a bit of a downer, but I just literally wanted to get this stuff off my chest and put the words out there and say, look, I think there's a problem, there's something going on here, this is out of whack, this isn't cool, and yeah, just splurge that out at you. Now, if this has not been your thing, then I suppose you probably didn't get it this far in the video, so it's a bit pointless to say, but tomorrow there will be a guide of some sort, which should be a lot of fun, so that'll be good. And, I don't know, let's raise our glasses to the prospect of patch 6.2 existing and being a good thing. Thank you very much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you next time.